Hi everyone. Here I am with the second half of my Deep Purple Child in Time experience. And you just watched the first listen of that, and now I have taken a few days and gone through the music and tried it out on my harp and listened and, dug into it a bit. And you all were right. This is a wonderful piece of music. Compelling, riveting, incredibly powerful. It's one of those pieces of music where the sum of the whole is much greater than the parts, although even the parts are great, each in their own way. One of the details I loved was how the drums interact and play around with the little melodic fragments of the organ in the opening lines. If you listen, you can hear the drummer working with the rhythmic elements of what I call the right hand, because I'm a keyboard player, of the organ part. It's not the riff, which is happening in the lower part, but it's the little running passages. And the drummer is creating a wonderfully dynamic feel, messing around with those rhythms that are happening on the organ without intruding. And then when the voice enters, what an expressively rich, colorful voice. But before I get too far into the song, I've got to talk about this riff. Of course, being such a famous song, probably most of you already know this, but I was interested to find out that Child in Time grew out of another instrumental song, Bombay Calling, by another band with the rather long name, It's a Beautiful Day. So, of course, I went to look up and see exactly what it was that inspired the whole thing, and that little rabbit hole ended up being quite entertaining for me. I found myself laughing as I listened to Bombay Calling, because it's so incredibly similar, and yet so wholly not profound in any way. It's a sort of cute, chipper little piece featuring some percussion, organ, violin, and the exact same riff serves as the entire basis for that song. Which means that one of the key identifying factors of Child in Time, one of its main compositional elements, was created by a different band. If by any chance you haven't heard it, you really ought to check it out. Here's a link. So, how did this funny little tune turn into Child in Time? It turns out that some members of Deep Purple were familiar with the song, and the story goes that John Lord started playing around with the Bombay Calling riff on the organ during a rehearsal, taking it kind of slower than the original, and then Ian Gillan, who, the story goes, hadn't heard the original song, began to improvise and sing along with it, creating his own melody and lyrics over John Lord's accompaniment. From what I read, it seems that it was one of those perfect moments of group inspiration where everything came together and fell into place very quickly, and they soon recognized that they had a real gem in the making. Of course, some say that they stole the song from the other band, but the funny thing is that the other band also borrowed material from Deep Purple right around the same time for a different song. So it seems like it was a two-way street. And personally, I love it. I think it's a great example of the incredible wealth within music and a reminder that we don't need to be too territorial in art. Of course, I understand the importance and value of intellectual property and all of that, and it's important to credit the originators of things, but it's really thrilling to trace the growth, the development, and recognize the positive impact one artist's work can have on another. Every giant stands on the shoulders of others. The architectural design of Child in Time is somewhat different from Bombay Calling, and I'll talk about that some more in a little bit. But this is a great moment to talk about another element of what makes a wonderful piece of music other than the thematic or harmonic or architectural design. Because if you listen to the building material of this song, first of all, it's incredibly basic. The exact same riff throughout the entire piece with no significant harmonic adventures, and it's not even original to the song or even the band. Yet, this song is so compelling, transcending the music even. It's one of the songs which came up early in the comments on this channel, and which you have been urging me to give a listen to for, well, a couple of months, which is a long time relative to the life of this project. And yet I don't recall a single mention of Bombay calling. Why not? After all, it's built around the same musical idea, or rather, it is the origin of the musical idea. Well, I mentioned the interplay of the drums with the organ earlier, which is really great and sets up a dynamism which remains even as these instruments take the back seat and allow the voice to enter. And it's this great artistic level of attention to detail from each of the performers that I think helps to set this song apart from the crowd. This riff is simple enough, repetitive enough. If it continued on its own, it would become rather hypnotic, and it could even be incredibly boring from the start. But the articulation of the first two notes gives just enough rhythmic energy to allow for the long third note without it becoming flaccid. What do I mean by articulation? I mean how each note begins and ends. In this case, the first two notes are articulated very distinctly with precisely cut off endings, like this. It simply wouldn't work for it to happen to sound like this. I'm doing the exact same rhythm, but I'm not giving the same articulation to the ending of the note. So all the little details, the things musicians do in addition to simply tapping, plucking, or poking the notes on their instruments, help to create the perfect environment for the voice to enter and be utterly free, fluid, rich. It's like a perfectly set table, ready for the food to be brought out. And when it comes out, wow. We suddenly realize we have a top-notch chef cooking our dinner. Every note is luscious, pregnant with meaning, colorful, full of passion, and it changes at every musical corner to exploit the opportunities of the moment and give us the fullest possible experience. A fun example, a little later in the piece, is when we get to the moment where he sings, "Wait for the ricochet." The whole ensemble sets every minute detail in place to give this wonderfully evocative effect, just especially for that one little moment. I tried to recreate something like it on my harp, and of course I had to modify it somewhat to suit the instrument. But again, the idea is about exploiting the opportunities that the musical moment provides with whatever instrument you have at hand. Like this. As this song progresses and intensifies, we never lose control. There's never a point at which the tires slip on the road surface, but boy, do we go right up to the edge of that moment. Ian's voice is very different, of course, but in this song I'm reminded of the first song I listened to, Love of My Life by Queen. There again, I felt like the singer was not only fully present in the moment, far beyond being fully capable, he was the master artist at work. So it is here. Not only do we hear, but we experience passion, power, pathos, sensitivity, fear, even catastrophe and devastation through the vehicle of Ian's voice. I feel like for anyone else attempting to sing this song, the original is going to be very hard to beat. Now, I listened to a little interview with Ian Gillan, and he talked a bit about the challenges of singing it and some of the conflict which developed because the other band members didn't fully understand how close to the edge he was pushing himself, to the point where he was at risk of permanently damaging his voice. I watched a live version as well these past few days, and there I could clearly see and hear it when he was on stage. Anyway, he said that eventually he just refused to sing it anymore, and I guess that was the right decision. But I am happy that I can enjoy the recorded version as much as I want, as often as I want. He also talked about the lyrics, saying they were inspired by the Cold War and reflect the fear that everyone lived with during that time. I'll include a link to the interview. It's short and it was very interesting to me, in case you want to watch it too. Anyway, knowing the source of inspiration, it's an interesting experience for me to hear this song for the first time now with the current state of international politics. But it's far more than just a political commentary on a relatively short episode in this world's history. There's a timelessness to it, which is due in large part to the practically perfect musical balance and performance. Another song I was reminded of while listening was Stairway to Heaven. I know, it might surprise you, but there are actually a lot of similarities. I could probably make a whole video comparing the two against each other. But I think the most obvious similarity would be the accelerando and the change of tempo in the music. These are really tough to pace exactly right. Do it either the tiniest bit too slowly or too quickly, and while it might be still exciting or impressive, it's just not quite there. But if you manage to hit that pinhead of perfect pacing, not only in tempo, but in volume and tonal intensification as well, we get something like Child in Time. By the way, if you want to learn more about music theory and compositional techniques, even if you are a total beginner, you can join my membership community on Ko-fi, where I am presenting a music theory course which is designed to take absolute beginners all the way to the point where they can write and arrange their own music, understand all music better, and even unlock some of the classical music world. But back to Zeppelin now. Not unlike Stairway to Heaven, the music builds throughout the verse and guitar solo, peaking at a dramatic, powerful climax. It would have been easy to take the usual path, ending with a little coda that recalls the opening and sets us back down on our feet, like Stairway does. And in fact, this is exactly what we expect and what the music suggests. But instead of coming to an end as we are led to believe, instead, we are taken through the whole journey all over again before we even know what is happening. It's like we had a chance to get off. We could have jumped off and left the ride when it was slow enough, but we didn't know. We thought it was going to come to a full stop. So now we didn't take the opportunity, and it's picking up speed again, and we can't jump off anymore. We go through the exact same experience. Even the words are the same. And then, instead of a guitar solo, the actual coda finally comes, and here we meet fear, an impending catastrophe, which we see coming and are powerless to stop. So instead, we watch spellbound as the whole thing takes place in front of us, even including us. This is the second climax of the song. It's hard to decide which one is more climactic, because they each have their own unique power. But it's not only that. In a way, it is not a new climax, but simply the completion of the first one. Because music, sound, instruments, even electronic ones, and our senses all have limits. And to break through the limit is to destroy the impact. We lose that climactic effect. It collapses and leaves us with a twisted heap of rubble. Classical musicians have faced this for centuries, and it has been the driving force behind instrumental development, improvements, inventions, the development of technique and technical prowess. We are always seeking to push to the very edge of the boundaries that exist. And by so doing, we sometimes manage to move the edge a little further out. But there will always be limits. And when it comes to creating a climax in music, we are limited both by the capacity of the human ear to take it in and by the instrument to create it. So we become masters of illusion. We learn that when we've almost reached the max capacity of our instrument, and yet we want even more, we have this little trick to back off so that we can give ourselves a bit more room to surge ahead once again. And if you do it well and balance all the elements, the audience doesn't perceive it as losing impetus or power, but instead as being carried along on an experience that transcends their expectations. And that is a bit of what happens in Child in Time. We think we've reached the climax of the song. The instruments are maxed out. The tempo is insane. But instead of pushing the music so far that the effect bursts and the tension, the pressure is lost, we're dropped back, and before we know it, the current has grabbed us again to be carried. We don't know where, but we can't escape now. Even though the second verse is an exact repeat of the first, we experience it differently because we still have the tension of the first climax in our experience. So as the second climax builds, it adds to what we faced before, thus giving us the effect of being even more powerful than the first. If we were to place both climaxes back to back, we could never experience the same force and intensity. So in this way, neither the instruments, nor the voice, nor us, the audience, ever go past our limitations. I like to compare it to G-forces. The most powerful experience doesn't go so far as to cause you to black out. Oh, we can get very, very, very close to the edge. But if we never crash through to the other side, we never lose the force or the power of the experience. I have to say that this kind of control, balance, is not something I've heard a lot of in my rock experience so far. And so I find it incredibly refreshing and satisfying to experience it here in this song. And I think it is one of the technical reasons that this song is so enduring. It works within the limits of our humanity, without disrespecting or injuring it, and so we can experience it fully to the very last ounce. So, do I like it? I'm sure you can tell. Yes, I do. Will it go on my playlist? I think so. I don't know exactly when I will be in the mood to listen to it again, but I do know that I will want to return to it more than once. In closing, I want to remind you of the poll going on in the community tab. Still a few days to go until we close it, so go there, vote for your favorite band, drop a comment with your song of choice, and next month I will review the winner. Also, if you want to receive notifications when I post new content, click the little bell next to the subscribe button, and click this link if you haven't yet watched my first listen of this song. I'll see you soon.